everybody, welcome to the Payments Podium. Today we're going to go offline. I mean, things are going to get a little bit crazy here. I got my friend Anurag Dubey from Lipis Advisors with us, and he's going to help us learn about offline payments. Now, Anurag, you've been here before, and I got to say, this is again another topic that I learned about while seeing you speak in Berlin. And I'm going to be honest with you. This might be surprising to you. When I saw this topic on the agenda, I said, I'm skipping that session. I'm going to go get a head start on the afternoon. It's the last session of the day. Offline payments, I don't really care about that. I mean, what's going to be so important about that I need to learn about? And I got stuck in the back of the room, so I couldn't get out. And then you started talking, and before I knew it, I'm like, holy crap, this is important and different than what I thought it would be. Because for me, and I'll quit rambling here in a minute so you can explain what it is. When I thought offline payments, I'm thinking checks. Nobody gets excited about checks. But to me, that and cash, are the biggest offline type payment. But when you talk about an offline payment, what is the meaning of, or what is the definition of what is now becoming an offline payment?
Yes, so offline payment, you already mentioned checks, you mentioned cash. You forgot, and this is something which basically payments started in an offline mode through barter system that, essentially, if you go back to prehistoric times, when people were actually trading in stuff, they would literally see, okay, I've received the goods, I confirm it, you have received my payment in form of another good. That's an offline payment, right? Now, in the modern terminology, when we are talking about, right, there is no, let's say, there's no standard definition of offline payment which is accepted by everyone. In the payment space, there are a number of scholars, number of practitioners who have different views on what is actually offline. However, I have a very practical definition I like to follow, which is essentially the ability to make consecutive payments without having any connection to the internet. So again, then there are some.
And you said consecutive payments? So your definition is consecutive, not just a single payment?
My definition is consecutive because if I'm only able to make one payment and then I have to connect to a system, I'm not truly offline. But that again, there are some people, as you mentioned, right? Then there is a spectrum of people who are believers that, okay, even if you are able to make one single payment without connecting to the internet, you are offline. Then there is another line of thought which says, okay, even if you are able to make one offline payment with no connection to internet, but you should also not be connected to a telecom network. So there are different approaches to how you want to look at offline. I look at it from the ability to make consecutive offline payments without connecting to the internet. So if I'm connected to a telecom network and I'm still able to make an offline payment, I would call it offline, because I consider that data has been commoditized enough and it's become more and more of an utility. So if I'm disconnected from that utility, I am able to and I'm able to make a payment, I would call it offline.
All right, I got to unpack a little bit of what you said there, because this is what started getting my attention. Is you're basically saying that we have electronic payments that are able to process and flow even though you don't have a active and direct connection to the network itself or to the bank itself at that time.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. There can be multiple combinations of it. In some cases, the payment initiator is offline. In some cases, the merchant can be offline. In some cases, the remitting bank is offline, but the user is online. In some cases, the system itself is offline. So there are various combinations of it which are getting explored. And so basically what also then in the whole mix comes this concept of, is it a temporary outage? So essentially, are you temporarily offline, or are entirely off grid? So essentially, you are in a very remote part of the world where there's no internet for days. That's like an off grid. Temporary offline is, okay, the internet connection failed, the network in my area failed, but I will be online in, like, I don't know, once the network resumes. Then there is an out of range scenario. So essentially, there are a number of different scenarios you can come up with. However, the core concepts behind how an offline payment gets processed does not change much. The core concept remains there. And there are, of course, small tweaks and more security measures are required if you want to do it in a consecutive fashion, and then reconciliation becomes an issue. You have to counter a number of problems, including double spending and all that. So it's a complicated topic. It's also a fun topic, and it came into mainstream very recently again because of CBDCs, actually. So CBDCs, a number of CBDCs, if you look at them around the globe, offline capability, the ability to pay in an offline mode, is considered crucial by a number of central banks, including the ECB here in Europe for the digital euro. And they are exploring it because they want the CBDCs to resemble cash. And cash, you can make a payment in an offline mode. And that's what got this topic again back into focus. Then BIS came up with a number of papers on it. We also actually came up with like a series of 6 papers. You've had Bonnie before here, so me and Bonnie, we authored 6 papers on different aspects of offline last year. So that's how I got into this topic.
Well, this right here is where I not only had sat back down, I pulled out and started taking notes because you actually called it the next frontier in digital payments. And I cannot agree more. This is like, wow. And that's where it's eye opening because, like you mentioned, CBDCs, if you don't have that connection, I started thinking of where are going to be times that maybe somebody doesn't have a connection. And, for like in the US, it's going to be the flea market or, going to the market on the weekend or something like that. Or some of those more rural areas up in the mountains, that you may not have the internet connection. We don't have a digital currency in the US, but we do have the faster payment networks. And there are times that you want to be able to use that network and you don't have the direct connection. So how does that get solved for then? That's the big thing that I'm sitting there. I was like, next is like, yes, it's a big frontier. How do you make this work? So what's the solutions? What are potential solutions? What's it look like?
So there are a number of solutions to how you want to approach it. And it all begins at an online level, right? So you have to see how your system is structured online. Is the system a token based system, or is your system an account based system? So account based systems would be real time payment systems like the faster payments in the US, UPI in India, Swish in Sweden, Ideal in Netherlands, Bizum in Spain, and so on and so forth. Like there's a huge list of it, right? The token based systems are blockchain based or other forms of token based systems such as CBDCs. They can be something like a stable coin, they can be something like other forms of digital currencies, right? Uh, and then once you are sure of, okay, this is how our online system is designed, then you move on to the offline modes, and then you figure out how do you want to structure your offline system. So when you are structuring the offline system, you need to consider, so there are 2 major considerations which come into picture. One is what is the security protocol which will be followed. The second one is the trusted environment in which it will happen. So trusted environment, by trusted environment, I mean, this is like the core component of any offline system. Essentially, some people also conflate it with form factors. So like, are you doing it in hardware mode or are you doing it in a software mode? So I'll deep dive a little bit on it. It can get very complicated, but I'll try to keep it a little bit simple. So on the hardware front, we can understand it as a form of a preloaded card by which you are making payments without having any connection to the internet. Because since it's in a hardware mode, you are not connected to the internet. And if the merchant is also not connected to the internet and still you are able to make the payment, it becomes in an offline payment in hardware mode. Now, what?
Okay, but in this case, still in this case, the let's call it a digital dollar or the dollar that I'm using, whatever currency it's in, it's still digital. It's either on that card itself or the hardware that is being used by the merchant. The information is captured, and at some point, there will be a connection made to the internet again and to those banks for that to get, let's say, processed, but it's just the ability to make the transaction happen until that point takes place, though, right?
Yes. So when you're talking about token based systems, it's not necessary to go back and reconcile with the system because it's a token, right? So token essentially, you can understand it in a very simplified way as a coin. I have a one euro coin. I give you that 1 euro. Now it's yours. You can give it to the next person as a token. There is no central system to which you are connected. However, the moment you move to the realm of account based, that is where it becomes important for you, either you, by you I mean either the payer or the payee, to go back and connect to the system at some point of time, where then the system basically takes in the information from your wallet, which was in an offline mode, and reconciles it with the accounts in an online mode. So then it gets processed more like a normal electronic online payment. However, from like there's just reconciliation which is happening. The payment initiation and the payment posting is kind of happening.
Okay, I'm an old guy, and I remember in the days of credit cards, we had what we called Knuckle Busters. Knuckle Busters and credit cards are when you put a credit card down and somebody would take this machine and go across with it to be able to get a copy of your card and everything was on there as much as you were paying. That was a true offline credit card type payment. So is this similar to something like that, but yet everything is still being captured and held electronically?
Yes, more or less, but not exactly. So in this, there are different wallets. Both the payer and the payee have wallets, and the information exchange happens. And this information is secured by use of secured elements. And these secured elements come in two forms. Then there are hardware-based secure elements and software-based secure elements.
You knew I was about to ask about the security on that because that's exactly where I was going with the Knuckle Busters, and what was happening there is it was a great solution for a while, but then there's people started figuring out how to do a lot of fraud in that. So what are the security elements and how do those work?
So secure element is basically a kind of a chip which is tamper resistant. So essentially, any kind of tampering other than a normal transaction, the moment it happens, it blocks the thing. You cannot process it. It will not process it. It can be done in software mode, as in like within your phone, it creates this within the operating system of your phone. It creates this small kind of a vault wherein only those permissible transactions happen, and any kind of man in the middle situation or any other attacks, the moment it recognizes them, it stops the payment, and then the payment does not happen. Then you have to go online, and then you have to go through the whole process again of resetting it and all that stuff.
Does that work like a NFC type chip of having to be in proximity and storing of the data that's on the card, or is that different?
Yes, so NFC based data exchange does happen. So NFC just enables the exchange of data. However, the data storage is happening on your device.
Okay.
Is it happening with?
Well, see, I like the NFC chip concept because it means, hey, I'm near field. I'm in the location for this to be able to happen. So, to me, it does bring another layer of confidence and insurance.
Yes, and it's very important that the security considerations are taken very seriously, and that is something which is also being discussed globally. So there are ways by which your normal PKI encryption, the public key encryption, which happens, that is something which provides some level of security in these transactions. However, there is also talk about quantum safe cryptography, which is being explored by a lot of these providers, and it's getting discussed. From a real-time payment point of view, still what is happening is a lot of systems. I can talk about UPI. I think the last time I was with you, we discussed UPI. They also offer offline capabilities with the UPI Lite wallet. uh, wherein you can make offline payments. However, the value thresholds are very, very low. And that is something which is kind of the nature of offline payments in general, which we are seeing. Uh, is that initially the payment systems, both faster payment systems, or as we call them, instant payment systems, as well as your CBDC systems, whichever are offering offline capabilities, they are offering offline capabilities with low value thresholds and not letting you do more than a fixed number of transactions. After that, they are requiring you to go online.
All right, I got to unpack that, what you just said there too, because this is something else that when you said it, it made me go, wait, what? I thought at first this is something that's new, we're working towards, it ain't happening yet. But then you just said, all right, India's like always, they're way ahead. They've already got it figured out. They're already doing it and doing it for the low value payments. And when I heard that, I was like, but wait a minute. Doesn't this require like a lot of new hardware? Doesn't it require a lot of new technological changes? How can they just quickly, easily implement it?
So essentially, it does require a specialized hardware if you're doing it in a hardware mode. So like if you're, however, for in the software mode, up till certain value limits, again, you have to take into consideration the various trade-offs when it comes to deciding these limits. Like it depends on the market, right? You cannot just have a really high limit on offline payments, and what if something goes wrong, then you're not able to recover it or like tackle it, right? So um, what is happening is with low value limits within the same offering. So UPI always, like not always, recently since the last 1.5 year has come out with this UPI Lite wallet, which lets you make small value payments in an online mode. They just extended the capacity of that wallet to make payments in an offline mode up till a certain amount. Using NFC, you can actually make a payment in an offline mode. So that's what they are doing. You Apart from UPI, Pix is also exploring it in Brazil. Cody is doing it in South America too. So there are a number of payment systems which are exploring it. And some of,
The question on this then, for the places where it's already in existence, is I know one of the keys to the success of any payment channel is the user experience. So for the user's experience, the user's expectations too, and you got both sides, the sender receiving side, are they seeing this taking place differently? Is it something that is easy for them to understand and adapt to when it suddenly goes from an online to an offline mode, or is it just transparent to them?
so here's the thing. So as a payer, right? It is very important for me to not be caring if I am connected to the internet or not before I make payment. So any payment system which offers an offline capability is essentially offering a better user experience because I should not be caring if I'm online or offline when I'm making a payment, and that makes me, I don't know, it reduces one small decision making from my life and it makes me happier, right? Let's lay it out like that. Uh, and of course it does add to the user experience from the merchant point of view. If the payment system works reasonably well, and when I use the term reasonably well, I am very careful because I'm talking about payment systems, and the word reasonably well has really high standards when you talk about payment systems, because this is not any other system that can go down, and there are huge economic repercussions of it. So by when I say reasonably well, I mean with a very high uptime, not much downtime and stuff like that, and the merchant has trust that the payment which I've received over this payment system, it will get reflected in my bank account, whether I receive it in the online mode or I receive it in an offline mode. And that is something which is transformational, because then merchants can actually offer services, or by offer services, I mean to say accept payments in remotest parts of the country. In in situations wherein the network crashes and I do not have internet, in case there's some outage, in cases like natural disasters, the whole
Hmm.
thing goes down, then the infrastructure does not exist. Even in such cases, as a merchant, and more than as a merchant, as a payer, I can still get the necessary essentials. I can buy them if I have money on my wallet, because the internet is not there, but I'm still able to make those payments. So it becomes very important. It provides resilience to the payment system, and 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 brings more and more trust, both from the payer as well as the payee side, into the payment system.
Well, some would say too, you're actually giving a reason why we'll never get rid of cash. But I got one last area I got to go into on this topic. And I don't mean to be, the downer and say, hey, it's never going to happen. But I already know, because my risk friends are out there probably screaming it at YouTube right now going, why don't you ask them about like anti-money laundering? Why don't you ask them about fraud controls? Or even better yet, government regulatory issues and compliance. Is this a new frontier for that as well? Because it is different in how it's being handled. It does, in my opinion, take away some of the controls that are there in a live network. So will we see a lot of new, and I think it will happen. I will say that too. I do believe this is going to happen. But will we see new regulatory controls, compliance that comes up in regards to this?
Yes, and that is something which will happen, because the moment you connect anything to a payment system, whether it be offline service, QR code, other interoperable services, NFCs, even NFCs have standards. So standardization and regulation are two very key components in any payment system these days, and that will happen. The moment, even for systems which have went live with the offline payment capabilities, they have done two things. One, of course, they have regulatory approvals for them. None of them is trying it without regulatory approvals. And when we are talking about CBDCs, of course, it is a central bank digital currency, so the regulator is directly involved, so there is regulatory oversight directly there. Second thing is, on the fraud front, none of these payment
Mm-hmm.
systems, when I'm talking about offline payment systems, are meant to replace online payment systems. They are just coming up or getting discussed as a way to widen the reach of the existing payment system. So what they are doing is they are not providing you the full value limits of your online payment system. What they're doing is they have a reduced limit, which is reasonable, and it varies from country to country because of the value of money and what you can purchase with that money. But it's not meant to replace your online payments. It's just a way for you to make offline payments if online goes down.
So could we say this is a way of moving payments forward and making sure that we've got, I don't know when you say safety nets, lifeboats for when the faster payment channels or for those countries going to CBDCs have issues, or like you even said, in a natural disaster. So it's more like making sure that we're taking care of people no matter what happens.
Yes, if you look at it that this way, this is why it's kind of getting discussed. It's getting discussed for payment system resilience and expanding the reach and financial inclusion. It's easy for you who's sitting in the US and me, I'm sitting here in Germany right now. It's easy for us to dismiss this financial inclusion clause. However, there are still a number of people who do not have access to the internet at all point of time around the world. It's also very important for people who are using feature phones now, or people who do not even have a phone at all. Now, for such people, if you have an online preloaded card which can be used in online mode as well as offline mode, that makes a lot of sense. For from a from a user from our point of view, if we talk about offline payments, it makes sense, of course, if the network goes down or if we are traveling. I'm on a flight, there's no network. How do I make a payment? Not all flights offer on-air Wi-Fi. It's a premium product, right?
Well, and the Wi-Fi doesn't always work either. So, I mean, we know that part too.
Yeah, let's not discuss the airline industry problems, I would say. but My simple point being, even it makes sense, even in general for our lives. And of course, it makes more sense for people who are financially excluded to have something like this, because it will expand the reach of the existing payment systems, which will then make it, of course, more and more people can use it for a variety of reasons. And no one is saying that we should replace the internet, like internet connectivity, like that everyone should go offline, then it becomes very similar to cash. That is not the motive here.
All right. Well, okay, this has been awesome. I got to say, Lipis Advisors and you are definitely pioneers on the forefront or frontier of what's happening in electronic payments. Like I said, everybody listening, this was one of those that, again, I was like, who cares about this? And now I'm realizing without a doubt, this is something everybody better be paying some attention to. So, Anurag, one last thing. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, wants to learn more about this, or wants to maybe take advantage of some of the Lipis services, how would they go about doing that?
So the easiest way to reach out to me would be LinkedIn. You can search me by my name, you'll find me. If you're not able to find me there, you can also email me at anurag.dubey, which is my name, @lipisadvisors.com. And I'll get back.
All right. Well, sorry. Thank you for being here today. And those of you who do need to get in touch with them, you can always email me too. And if there's a topic or maybe there's a speaker that you would like to have on the Payments Podium, email me, Kevin at paymentsprofessor.com. I will do my best to make sure that we get you in touch with Anurag, we get that topic you're looking for, or we get that speaker that you want to hear. But for now, this is where I say, class dismissed.